Changes to our country's laws. Let me be specific. Changes to our intelligence laws are simply, well, stupid. And that's according to constitutional law expert Professor Pierre de Vos. He says the General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill is undemocratic. Well, Cabinet did approve the draft legislation for tabling in Parliament. Of course, now it is a bill, but requires anyone, listen to this, anyone who wants to establish a non-profit organisation to undergo security scrutiny. But it goes even further than that. Let's see where this rabbit hole leads us. Professor Pierre de Vos joining us via Zoom in Cape Town. Prof, good to have you with us. A scathing article that you've written, but when it comes to the intelligence of our country, it's well justified. Just give me a sense, your high-line concern about this. What is that? Good morning.
Good morning. The highline concern is that the bill really represents a complete and dramatic shift about how we view national security. In the current legislation, national security is about protecting the constitutional order. Explicitly excluded is lawful political activity, protest, dissent. That is not something that the intelligence service is supposed to look into because that interferes in the democratic process. This is now changed. The provision is proposed that the provision that says national security doesn't include lawful political activity, that be removed. And the new proposal is that national security really should be seen as anything to do with the existing government, simplifying slightly, being able to implement its policy and programs. If there's any obstacle to that, that would become a national security issue, which of course potentially could create really a bad situation where the intelligence services interferes in perfectly lawful political activity, spy on people who are disagreeing with the government and so forth.
And this is a dangerous path to go down as well, because we know it can happen in countries where intelligence starts getting used as an excuse to spy on individuals, NGOs, NPOs, and as you say, Prof, anyone who doesn't agree, potentially, with what the government is doing. I'm going to talk about the impact on society in a moment. Just give me the constitutional framework around this. In our constitution as it currently sits, where does this bill possibly fit into, or is it a complete departure, really, from what our constitution suggests and should be enshrined when it comes to this sort of national security?
Yes, the Constitution says that intelligence service needs to. It basically encapsulates the idea that it's about protecting the constitutional order, and the kind of values that underline the Constitution. If you want to give it a push in that direction, there are also provisions, of course, in the Bill of Rights that make and elsewhere that make clear that intelligence services are not supposed to get involved in, in lawful political activity and so on, and that it needs to be. It's about protecting the state. It shouldn't be about protecting a specific elected government or advancing its interest in the political arena.
Because I suppose the issue here for society could be a case of whatever then gets deemed to be under this National Intelligence Act on a whim, it seems, could be made secret. It could be a situation where people could be arrested if they don't agree with it. How dangerous is this for a society, especially such as ours, where we rely on NGOs, NPOs, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, etc.? How dangerous is this, especially in a country like South Africa?
Well, as the proposed bill stands, it really will depend on the relevant cabinet minister and of course, who's the government of the day and what they prepare to do and not to do. For example, on the vetting of NGOs, it is not actually that every single NGO, head of NGO will be vetted. The minister will decide which categories of NGOs will be vetted. So if the minister is a person that can be trusted, and if the cabinet can be trusted, there might be less of a problem, still a problem, but less of a problem. But of course, the problem is that once you give these powers, they can be used. If it's given in such broad terms, it can be used even legally in a way that is going to be abusive. and that is going to make it more difficult to be for civil society to do their job, and it might make it more difficult to be critical of the government to do things that they will say you are stopping us or you're hindering us from doing our job. So it potentially, in the wrong hands, it can really narrow the political space and the space for political contestation, both in party politics, but more broadly in society.
Yeah, let's talk about the legal framework, as I imagine there will be quite a lot of opposition to something like this. It is a bill currently. What would the legal steps of this involve if this is something that goes as high as the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Could this legal fight end up at the Concord? Would they have to weigh in, do you think? Should they be weighing in?
Yes, well, first the bill needs to be passed. I'm hoping that there's not going to be enough time before the next election to pass the bill, so then it will have to be reintroduced and revived if they want to do that. Once it's passed, of course, then the question will be about specific provisions and whether it infringes on any of the rights in the Bill of Rights, whether it infringes on the provisions in the Constitution dealing with the intelligence service. So those are specific issues. As it stands, it seems to me the bill will be unconstitutional, even just because it's incomprehensible. Some of the definitions and so on, it doesn't really make sense. It's impossible to know what it says. There are contradictions. Some places, some provisions are included and they're not included elsewhere. So technically, that's why I said stupid and malice, because the bill is incoherent. Drafters didn't know what they were doing, but then also on the substance, there are really reason to be concerned, I think, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Prof, thank you very much. And that's why, thankfully, for now, it's at least a bill which still has to be debated and unpacked. Professor Pierre de Vos, thank you very much. Constitutional law expert.